Hey guys, it's Raquel Williams. Welcome to my new channel, Get Reddit with me, where I read the craziest stories on Reddit while doing my makeup. Today we're going to be reading some bad romance stories and doing a Valentine's Day look. Get Reddit with me. Most of these are from the subreddit Am I the Asshole? Am I the asshole for siding with my 28 male sister-in-law, 34 female, over my wife, 26 female? My wife is a beautiful, hardworking woman who has a high education and a solid career. We were college sweethearts and have been married 2 years. We own a house together. We both have master's degrees and careers that we worked hard for. We're currently trying for a baby as we're ready to take the next step in our lives. From what I gathered from my in-laws, my wife's older sister is her half-sibling. They have the same father, but grew up in different households. After their father's infidelity in his first marriage with my sister-in-law's mom, her parents divorced and my father-in-law remarried and had my wife with his new wife. I heard my sister-in-law grew up in poverty with her mother in a rundown area and saw my father-in-law on weekends. My wife's parents, father-in-law and mother-in-law, are very educated and have solid careers as well. My wife grew up in a two-parent household in the suburbs. Apparently my sister-in-law is also disabled. I'm a very empathetic person and was curious to know what happened, so I gently brought it up to my sister-in-law during an outdoor family get-together. She confirmed it was all true and went into further detail. She had multiple surgeries for medical conditions, was bullied in school, almost died twice, her mother was poor and struggling, etc. Despite her degrees, she's been trying to get employed for years and has used temp agencies, but she said employers terminate her as soon as she requests accommodations. So she's been on and off government assistance for years. She's also medically sterile. She's apparently also been in therapy for over 10 years. At this point, my sister-in-law started tearing up, so I ended the conversation and apologized for asking. Later on at home, when I brought up the conversation to my wife, she immediately goes on to say that her sister has a tendency to play the victim. She needs to be patient, work harder, etc., etc. After getting to know my sister-in-law more, though, I'm even more grateful for what I have. My wedding with my wife was paid for by our family. We have solid careers that we got right out of college. We're in great health. We have a bunch of friends, and we were never bullied in school. When I brought up that I'm so thankful that we're so fortunate, my wife immediately got defensive and goes on about hard work, not to let the past define you. Anyone can make it if they try hard enough, etc. I've never seen this side of her before. While I acknowledge we both worked very hard to get to where we are, I gently told her we do have our parents and upbringing to thank for that. She snapped at me. She's a licensed counselor, but I honestly thought she would be more empathetic to her own family member who's been through so much. I definitely would. Thankfully, my siblings never went through that, but I couldn't even imagine if they did. Am I the asshole for taking my sister-in-law's side over my wife's? Edit. Thank you for the replies and sorry for any confusion. What I left out is what confuses me the most is I'm hearing things from my other in-laws that match up with what my sister-in-law said. Basically, it is my wife's word against my sister-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, mother-in-law, etc. My sister-in-law is also apparently low contact with father-in-law, and father-in-law doesn't know why. It's all confusing to me. There's so much to unpack here. So it sounds like this family, this dad left his first family, started a new family, and left the former family basically in poverty. The sister is disabled from what I gather by the way he tells the story. I'm guessing it's from a fairly young age because he says she had multiple surgeries for medical conditions, was bullied in school, almost died twice, her mother was poor and struggling. I assume that these things happen in some type of order, or maybe not, but regardless, it sounds like this dad was pretty well off with his new wife, new family, and subsequently younger daughter. And so for them to be judging her for not having things together, yeah, that's like very strange. Obviously, I'm going to go with they're the assholes, OP is not. I'm a little bit confused on how you can be married to someone and not see this type of behavior in them, like these type of values. I think those are things that like jump out pretty early on, but anyway, let's see what the comments have to say. The top voted comment is in response to him saying that he thought his wife would be more empathetic to her own family member. And the replier says, "What makes you think she doesn't know more of the story than you do?" That's the top voted comment. OP says, sorry if I didn't go into further detail. I originally found out information from other family members while we were dating and engaged as well. I noticed that when it came to family gatherings, her younger siblings showed up, but never her older one. Father-in-law would bring it up, saying his oldest wasn't attending again. So I wondered, what was that family dynamic? My sister-in-law recently admitted that she's low contact with my father-in-law. Also for Christmas, for example, my wife's parents said to get medical supplies for the oldest's gifts. Okay. Also, his wife is in the field of psychology, so you would think that like she would be very empathetic to whatever her sister is going through, but apparently not the case. Someone else wrote, if she accepts her sister's story, she will have to admit that her father is not a good person. Ooh, that's a really good point. I think a lot of times that is where these kind of attitudes come from, is that they have to sort of like reckon with something that they're not ready for. And so instead of doing that, they deflect, they create a story in their mind. I think that that's very common. And then she'll also have to admit that she didn't do it 100% on her own. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting any type of financial help from your parents, you're more fortunate than most. And, you know, you have to acknowledge that. I think to not acknowledge that is actually doing your parents a disservice. So, and yourself. So the official consensus on this post was not enough info. I'm going to go ahead and say OP is absolutely not the asshole. I don't think there's a world in which he is the asshole, but also that his wife definitely is an asshole, and so is most of her family. And that if that's the way that they're going to treat her sister, what if you were to have a disabled child? How would she treat that child? I would say, you know, take this whole relationship with a huge grain of salt personally. Am I the asshole for telling my 32 female best friend, 32 female, that her dating standards are unrealistic? For fun, I'm going to come up with a hypothesis of the asshole because I think a lot of people say that to humble someone, when my opinion about unrealistic dating standards is if you would rather be single than settled, I think that's actually a really good choice. So if your dating standards are up here and you're only meeting people that are down here, be single. It's not that difficult. My best friend, let's call her Elle, and I have been close for 10-ish years. During that time, she's been in a couple of relationships but has been single for a few years now. Amongst our friends, Elle is the only unmarried one. Boring friend group, but that's just my opinion. She's made it clear that she's unhappy with being single, sincerely hopes to get into a serious relationship and get married sooner rather than later. I can understand her frustrations, especially since she's the only single friend, wants kids someday, and so on. About a month ago, Elle told me that she intends to be more proactive with dating this year and asked if I had anyone to introduce her to. Unfortunately, I don't. Another friend mentioned knowing a great guy who I happen to have met before who's single and looking for something serious. Elle was introduced via text to the guy, and they soon started talking on the phone. Elle says he has a lot of good attributes, e.g., very educated, high salary, but she finds him completely unattractive because they're the same height. He's 5'7" and she's 5'7", and because of his darker skin tone. Oh, okay. Okay, I stand corrected. I tried to convince her that his height and looks shouldn't take precedence over his personality, but this soon led to a major revelation on her dating standards that left me completely dumbfounded. Okay, so I do think that you should be attracted to the person that you're dating. However, if your standards are they're too short and they're not the right race, then it's giving racist, eugenicist, weirdo. But anyway, if you're just not feeling the vibe, that's a different thing. But if you're not giving someone a chance for those reasons, like the height thing can be a preference, especially like I'm 5'10" and a half. So like dating someone shorter than me is really a non-issue, but maybe if you're 5'7", you feel different. I don't know. I don't really get it. The whole skin tone thing though is like, brother, Elle told me she's only interested in men who are, her words, an 8 or better. Looks-wise, taller than her when she's wearing heels, of a certain complexion, ideally no beard, has advanced degrees, making over 100,000 a year, doesn't have kids, and is currently attending church every week or every other week. But the big kicker that got me was that she insists that she's unwilling to date a man, like go out on dates, who won't commit to waiting until marriage for sex. Yes, she's religious, but she's not a virgin and has had sex in all past relationships. Okay, hot take. I think it's a good thing that she has these super high standards. because it means she's less likely to procreate, and then we won't have to see this woman as a mother. Hot take. According to Elle, this is a conversation that should be had before even the first date, and if the guy isn't firmly agreeing, it's a no-go. When I challenged her thoughts and logic on this, she got increasingly upset. I told her I think that she's asking for a very tall order, making dating harder than it should be. I'm not saying she should compromise on her religious values, but I am trying to tell her that she should be more open-minded about her criteria because she's looking for a 1 in a million guy, while also prematurely shutting down and shutting out some potentially great guys because of their income and or height. Quick question. Why would those guys want to date her? Like, you're setting your guy friend up for failure. Instead of trying to convince her to date him, just be like, you're an asshole, bye. Elle is now furious at me and says I'm not being a supportive friend. She says that I don't understand her faith and am being something of a Debbie Downer. Am I the asshole? I'm gonna guess that this woman is not from a niche faith. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say you probably understand her faith a little bit better than she does. Yikes. So the top of photo comment says, not the asshole, her criteria are unrealistic, but there's no use in telling her that. Agree. I'd say if she's serious about waiting for marriage, then she needs to drop all the other criteria and only talk to men at church. If she's using it as a filter tool, it's set too high. My wife and I met on Match back in 2007. We were both divorced parents. On the second date, she explained her 6-date rule. I had no problem with that. We hit it off, obviously, and by date 4, we were recategorizing visits as dates. Later, she told me about her year of first dates where she went on a bunch of first dates with guys who she either wasn't interested in or who lost interest in her over the 6-date rule. I'm sorry, telling someone on the second date that you have a 6-date rule, like, how hard is it to wait out 6 dates? That's such a weird fucking thing to tell someone. And by date 4, we were recategorizing visits as dates. Whoop-de-doo, Basil. So basically you just hung out with her and called it a date. I don't know. Good for you, I guess. And so OP responded to that and said, I asked her why she isn't looking for prospects at church, and she said all the men at church are already paired off. Someone said single men don't go to church except with their moms. Damn. You know what? Christian Mingle. This is a sponsored ad by Christian Mingle. Christian Mingle, cut me a check. Someone said, yeah, that's the thing, honey. All the tall, hot, rich, light-skinned, Jesus-loving virgins got married at 20 so they wouldn't have to be virgins anymore. The big unspoken secret of waiting until marriage is not waiting very long. Boom, bam, beam. Am I the asshole for backing out of my friend's wedding after she gossiped about my breakup? My ex-boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 years and living together for 3. I've been unhappy in our relationship for the past few months and finally decided it was time to break up with him. I broke up with him last week and it's been extremely painful ever since. There have been lots of tears and conversations, and trying to navigate moving out on top of everything has been hell. For context, I love my ex very much, but I felt breaking up was my only choice if I wanted to be happy as things were not getting better. I'm a big fan of this type of attitude. Do not hope that things will get better, because if someone's not putting in effort, they won't. On to the story. One of my friends had a bridal shower this weekend and I could not be more excited for her. My ex-boyfriend and I have been good friends with this person and their fiance. We have even gone on vacations together. My friend is aware of my breakup and has seen firsthand how much I have agonized over this decision. When I arrived at her bridal shower yesterday and started greeting other guests, I quickly realized that somehow everyone in the room already knew about my breakup. Throughout the night, I was approached by multiple people, even ones I barely know, who offered their condolences, told me they were proud of me, asked how my apartment search was going, and prompted me for details about my breakup and impending move. The maid of honor even pushed for details multiple times in front of the bride's family, even though I was very clearly trying to navigate away from the subject. The whole night felt like one of those scenes in high school when you walk into a room and notice people looking at you as if they've just been whispering about you. I played it off as best as I could and tried to change the subject whenever possible. Apart from that, I would say the evening went fine and everyone had a lovely time celebrating the bride. However, since getting home yesterday, I can't help but feel really betrayed. It feels like my friend used my painful breakup as gossip and shared it with a lot of people who shouldn't know my personal business, especially since I'm not close with them in any way. Both my ex and I are real people with real feelings, and our pain shouldn't be used as party gossip. I've also started receiving texts from people who attended the party informing me that they've heard what happened and asking how I'm doing. While I understand their intentions are positive, this feels very invasive. These are her friends, not mine. I would have understood her sharing this with her partner or even a close mutual friend of ours, but this was much bigger than that. I texted her today and told her I could no longer be her bridesmaid or friend. Both her and the mother-in-law think I overreacted. Now I'm second guessing my decision and worried I was too rash. I just simply can't imagine treating a friend this way when they feel so vulnerable. Am I the asshole? So this is sad because I can see this happening. You know, I could see the friend being like, "Oh, so and so is coming," and people like, "Oh, how's she doing? Oh, not so good. She had a breakup." Like I can see that conversation happening in a way that's like not malicious at all. However, why is this other woman's friends calling her? Like it just feels very, yeah, invasive, as she said. Like it just seems very unnecessary. It's the bride's job to be like, hey, can you please leave her alone? Give her some space, you know? Maybe she's not aware of the extent that this is going on, but like, she probably is. So the top upvoted comment says, you're valid in feeling how you feel. I was definitely a betrayal of trust. While I'm inclined to say you're not that asshole, I will say, if only as a consolation, I find it reassuring they were approaching you with condolences and well wishes. Does this look good? I'm kind of freestyling here, so I don't know. I think it looks cute, but watch me watch this back and get scared. While this is not justification for that betrayal of trust, the core of gossip is inherently not empathetic and is passed around like a hot potato with the intent of sabotage. I don't necessarily agree. A person's image to deflect the spotlight off one's own life and misgivings. This does not sound like your friend disclosed the details. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Someone says, I don't completely agree. Depending on the type of people we don't know, the condolences could be an act. Oh, okay. That's another take. I think people are just nosy by nature. Gossip is as old as language, right? Not to get all philosophical, but like, it's just kind of normal. That being said, like, it's just not their business. And it's really not their place to be texting you about it. Like, say what you want amongst yourselves, but don't kick someone while they're down. Or even if you're like helping them out, like, just know when people need space. That's a big thing. Am I the asshole for yelling at my friend when she took her nosiness regarding my girlfriend's personal business too far? I'm pissed over this, so please tell me if this makes no sense. I, 22 female, have been with my incredible girlfriend, Lane, 22 female, for just over a year now. I introduced her to all my friends about 4 months in, and since then, she's been hanging out with us, 7 including me, regularly. What the hell? So I have a friend, Freya, 23 female, who is kind of nosy. For a couple weeks, Lane has been out of town. Before anyone asked, she didn't want me to come. I offered, but she said she just needed to do this alone. Okay. For family issues I won't spill here. And Freya has been nagging me like crazy about it. Me and my friends all go to the same university and we hang out pretty much every day, so I can't avoid her. First, I thought it started with honest concern. I told her what I said before, that she's out of town for some family stuff, plain and simple, subtly trying to get the idea across that it's none of her fucking business. She accepted that for all of one day. She then amped it up to pressing about exactly what the family thing is. I just kept shutting her down, calmly asking her to drop it, saying that Lane doesn't want her stuff being aired out like that, which she had explicitly told me. But she just wouldn't take no for an answer. Just kept insisting that it was fine if she knew, and I would just ignore her. Last night was my last straw. We were hanging out at a local bar when Lane called me. I told my friends I'd be back in a bit and went outside to take it. Lane was pretty upset, so I told her I'd get a cab and go home so I could fully focus on her. I quickly went back into the bar to tell my friends I had to go. Mind you, I still had Lane on the line because I was only anticipating for it to take a minute. I just said something like, hey guys, but I gotta go, see you later, and pointed at the ongoing call. Freya, who was dead sober, decided it was a great idea to try and grab my phone from my hand, yelling questions at Lane. I backed up and held the phone to my chest, completely surprised because seriously, what the fuck? I yelled at her to back off and told her my girlfriend's personal stuff was none of her business. She spluttered for a second, everyone else just staring at us bewildered before I just left. I talked to Lane on the way home and told her what happened, but said it was no big deal right now and refocused the conversation on what she needed to talk about. By the time I got home, I had turned my phone on Do Not Disturb and was FaceTiming Lane, so I didn't see the messages from my friends until today. Freya was pissed that I yelled at her, and two of our other friends, Toby, 23 male, and Clay, 22 male, shared the same sentiment of me embarrassing Freya by getting so angry at her when she was just worried about Lane. The rest of my friends were asking me if I was okay and siding with me. I just want to know, despite my friends and Lane telling me Freya was totally weird for it, did I overreact? I'm starting to feel a bit guilty. I never ever yell like that. So I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that Freya has a crush on the OP. I mean, that would kind of explain a little bit of her behavior and why she's being a fucking weirdo. We also don't know the dynamic really between OP and her girlfriend, because all we know is that Lane was going through a family emergency. OP offered to go with her. She said, no, I want to do this on my own, which is totally normal. And then when she called OP at the club, upset, OP, left to handle that, which it sounds like she was upset about the original situation that she went home for, I would assume. I was wondering if this was going to turn into a situation where she was upset because like Freya said something to her, which doesn't appear to be the case. So, based on that, it sounds like they have a good relationship. Sometimes, your friends see things that you don't see, and sometimes they see a truer version of events, and sometimes they are seeing their own bastardized version of things. So I really think OP's not the asshole for, setting her girlfriend's boundaries. And I think snatching someone's phone out of their hand and like harassing their partner when they're going through a hard time, don't do that. And so for her to protect her girlfriend like that, not the asshole. I'm going to go out and say that. So the top commenter said, not the asshole. Freya tried to take your phone to ask invasive questions about something that has nothing to do with her. I would definitely keep my distance. You know the truth. Freya wasn't just worried about Lane. She's a nosy busybody who inserts herself into situations she shouldn't. I hope your girlfriend's family issues work out in the best possible way. Good luck to you and Lane. Okay, so she's saying also that they have this friend group of like 7 people, and Freya's pissed and 2 of the other friends are pissed, and everyone else is siding with OP. So, I mean, where's the question here? Not the asshole, right? All right, so this one's from the subreddit TraumatizeThemBack. Don't want to believe the person you are trying to flirt with. It's not gonna go well. Hi, I wrote this after seeing somebody else's post about others assuming they are not Norwegian. Unfortunately, there are plenty of people out there who just assume stuff based on very little evidence, or just flat out try to disagree about where you are from. I actually just went to Norway, and yeah, a very diverse place. It's not a bunch of tall blonde people, okay? The story I am telling you happened a handful of years ago in the elevator, an old ass elevator that takes forever to move up and down at times. I, female, had entered the elevator of my apartment building to ride it up to my floor. A guy my age entered right after me. I'd never seen him before and was pretty sure he or his parents were from Pakistan originally. Edit, this matters because where I live, people with immigrant parents usually call themselves what nationality their parents are for various reasons. Info about me and my looks. I am mixed race, half Dominican, half Swedish, raised in Norway my entire life, but I spent a few months a year in Sweden with family for vacations, and my day-to-day life is pretty influenced by my parents' nationalities. Culturally, though, I am mostly Norwegian and Swedish. It surrounds me every day. I mix the languages when I speak, etc. He smiled and said hello, and I said hello back. Then he seemingly tried to fix his hair and asked me if I had lived in the building for long. I told him I had been there for almost 2 decades, and he looked shocked. Then he explained that he was new there and asked me where I was from originally. Now, I rarely get hit on, so I usually miss it when it happens, and I need other people to tell me that that person flirted once I tell them about my encounters. However, this time it was pretty obvious. Even I couldn't miss the flirtatious smile. He reminded me of myself when I try to flirt. I told him that I was from Norway. He laughed and said, nah, tell me where you really are from. I realized where this was going and decided to be petty, so I played along. Ah, you caught me. Sweden. He looked confused, but then tried to steer the conversation back and asked me where my parents were from. I told him Sweden and a tiny island in the Caribbean. So you are Latina. How is it there? So you speak Spanish? I told him that I didn't know because I had never been there and that I didn't speak much Spanish. I was trying to make it really obvious how much I was looking at that tiny screen in the elevator about what floor we were on. I was really trying to stop the convo, but he continued it. He got confused and asked, why not? At this point, we were almost at my floor, so I just told him how it was, knowing that it would make stuff awkward. My parents are divorced, and my father was never around to teach me the language or culture. After a few awkward seconds, and then the elevator stopped at my floor, and I decided to be a little turd and said, bye, in the most happy-go-lucky voice I could muster. We never talked again. Lesson: don't dig into people's business, especially when you're trying to flirt. If you're curious or just want to chat, just accept the first or second answer. Some people are adopted, mixed race, or just don't look like their counter stereotype. Let it go. It's not rude to ask, but it's rude to keep pushing. Boom. The verdict on these traumatize them back verdicts are so funny. Don't start none, won't be none is the verdict. So yeah, I mean, this is great. When I first saw this post and started reading it, and it's on the subreddit Traumatize Them Back, I was a little worried it was going to be like a fighting xenophobia with xenophobia situation. So I'm really glad to hear that it wasn't that and that she, handled it. And it's also just like an annoying question. So I obviously don't look Latina, but my name is Spanish Raquel. In the West Coast, it's a complete non-issue, but in New York, everyone's like, so you speak Spanish, right? And I'm like, nope, I sure don't. Neither does my mom. My grandma did, but we don't. And it's just awkward, but like usually people are kind of like, okay, whatever. It's like a bit of a different situation than what she's dealing with here. Like, just because someone's ethnically from a certain place doesn't mean that they speak the language. And like, yeah, you might be bringing up some shit if you keep pushing it. Whether this story is true or not doesn't really matter as long as he felt awkward about it. I used to get the where are you really from question from people born in the teens and 20s. Okay, so this person's older. A lot while I was growing up in rural Illinois. My mom was a mail order bride from the Philippines, and my dad's a white Midwesterner. I was one of only 3 Asian kids in my town. When I give a town name just down the road, when they'd ask the first time, they'd glitch and double down. But where were you born? I was literally born in that Midwest town just down the road. My English is so good because it's the only language I know. I'm not a Latina, and if my mom had taught me any of the 3 other languages she knew, Spanish would not be one. If you must know, I'm white and Asian. It was always great watching them not know how to respond. Most would shuffle off. One cashier who couldn't get away said she didn't realize there were any Asians around and then shut up and finish the transaction. I don't know how people make it to adulthood without realizing that you don't have to say every thought that enters your brain, but that's crazy. And as a young retail worker, the number of little old Hispanic people that would chastise me for not speaking my birth language, Spanish, was ridiculous too. I'd end up giving the same answer about being a mixed Asian and that Spanish wasn't even my mom's native language. 90% of the time, they duck their head and shuffle off as fast as they could. I mean, yeah. I can also see not excusing any of this behavior, but there was, a Spanish regime in the Philippines, so like a lot of people have Spanish last names, so I guess I can see the confusion. But I don't know, just maybe like don't assume, and shame on you for not speaking Spanish. Well, I mean, presumably if they could, they would, right? Like, not gonna pretend to relate to that, but like, yeah, I don't know. I also think it's weird to flirt with someone and be like, where are you from? Where are you really from, girl? I don't know. It almost is like, oh, I like where you're from and I'm not interested in you as a person. Should I do like a little Kentucky Derby? Hot. This makeup look is actually insane, but I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the first episode of Get Reddit with me, Valentine's edition. These romance stories were bad. You and me can have a bad romance if you follow me on get_ready_with_me on YouTube. Also follow my podcast. It's Raquel's Modern Life Podcast on YouTube. It's also Raquel's Modern Life on Spotify. And I'm also on Instagram. Join me next time for another makeup look. They're not all going to be this weird, but some of them probably will be. Happy Valentine's Day, assholes.